accept those apologies? Yes? Thank you. Any declaration of interest? No? Thank you. So item 4 is public forum. So really this meeting is being called as an information gathering meeting to allow residents of Colne to make representations on the neighbourhood plan and green spaces review. So do we have any people now online that want to ask questions? So we call Alison Birkinshaw first.
Can you hear me?
Right, well, thank you for attending, Alison. And can I ask you to try and avoid, can I ask you to keep the time, please, if you can?
Yes, I will. I hope you can hear me. It's a bit tricky, the volume. So I've got 2.5 minutes, I think, and I'd like to speak because I'm a trustee of the Lidget and Beyond charity. So thanks for giving me time. Over the last 10 years, Lidget and Beyond has fought against many unsuitable and unsustainable planning applications, and we've got some good experience in the planning process. We worked with Kirkwells in our fight to save the Rough, and they understand planning and they understand neighbourhood plans. They've done lots of them, and we have a great deal of trust in them, and we'd like to recommend them to you. We think you could trust them. Lidget and Beyond kicked off neighbourhood planning in the area, and we worked hard on the East Colne and Villages plan, and that then developed into the Trawden plan and the Colne plan. That was nearly 5 years ago, and the Trawden plan is made and really successful, and the Colne plan is on the home stretch. There are obviously about 50 neighbourhood plans that Kirkwells have worked on over that period, and these are 2 of them. Because Trawden now has an adopted neighbourhood plan, it's got total and ultimate protection, and Trawden can now choose its own sites, and it can meet the target handed down in a way that controls its own destiny. In that way, it can reject applications that don't fit in with their neighbourhood plan. And that's a really important point, because in the draft Pendle plan, Trawden was totally ignored by Pendle and wasn't affected at all by that plan. Now, the Colne plan is at a critical stage, and we would really ask that it progresses as is so that it's finalised really quickly. If there's a delay and we have to redo Regulation 14, it would have terrible consequences for the whole of Colne and the whole of the Colne plan. It would have to be rewritten to reflect some of Pendle's choices, so Colne would be completely disempowered. It's worth noting that the Pendle plan has no green spaces at all for Colne. We couldn't consider the Upper Rough as green spaces or Gib Hill as green spaces because they're allocated or reserved sites. We wouldn't be able to have a design code, as Pendle says they're too onerous, they threaten viability. So we wouldn't be able to have any say over the design of our buildings. Our good for Colne policies around brownfield sites, shop frontages, takeaways, really preserving what's great about Colne, that would be rejected. And Colne would be given the extra target from Nelson and Briarfield, given the lack of building there, meaning much more development in Colne, and our hands would be tied. So please, let's press on and get the Colne neighbourhood plan finalised. Thank you.
Thank you, Alison. Thank you for that. Our next speaker is Andrew Ashworth.
Hello, did you say Andrew Ashworth?
I did, yes.
Yes, hello, okay. Well, thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak about local green spaces in the Colne neighbourhood plan. I've lived in Waterside for some 48 years, and during the last 30 years, I've been fighting to protect initially what were fields off Knotts Lane and more recently the fields at Gibb Hill. Sadly, I've witnessed one green field after another disappear under these Lego boxes that they build. And despite residents' pleas at council meetings, there's been very little that anybody locally has been able to do about it. Now, the Colne neighbourhood plan gives me some reason to be more optimistic, as for the first time, people in Colne and Colne alone are responsible for shaping the future of the town. For example, by being able to allocate sites for new housing on previously developed land rather than on our green fields. During the first consultation, many sites were proposed as local green spaces, both by the Plan Committee and by local residents. Gibb Hill was initially proposed, but despite a very strong representation from myself, it unfortunately simply does not meet the criteria, according to the planning experts. This is a great shame, but I accept it. There's absolutely no point forcing it to be included if that would result in the whole neighbourhood plan failing the public examination. And just before the last elections, it was proposed to allocate the field at the top of the Lenches as a local green space in a bid to ward off plans by Gleeson's to build 212 houses there. It's absolutely sickening that they are pushing to build there. It's a field I've loved dearly for years, and I've spent many a sunny evening sat up there by the fish ponds. But I didn't for a moment think there was any possibility of them building houses there, as it's outside of the settlement boundary, which I assumed gave it automatic protection. But now I'm told that because the Pendle local plan has taken so long to progress, it's out of date and no longer gives this protection. However, I understand that the Colne neighbourhood plan will protect sites like the Lenches, which are outside of the settlement boundary. So it's absolutely imperative that it gets adopted as quickly as possible before any planning applications are lodged. The neighbourhood plan will also protect the Lenches field and most other green fields in and around Colne, because pretty much all the required housing for Colne can be accommodated on the previously developed sites identified in the plan. Clearly, the main threat to the Lenches at this moment in time is the imminent planning application from Gleeson's. We've already wasted 7 weeks, so please don't delay any longer. Otherwise, without the neighbourhood plan in place during the next 18 months or 2 years, many of our precious green spaces in and around Colne are going to be carpeted in yet more Lego houses. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Ashworth. The next speaker is Kieran McGladney, who's a Pendleborough councillor. Is Mr. McGladney there? Kieran, are you there?
Who?
Ask the town clerk to read out the statement from John Hartley.
So, Mr. Hartley's asked that this is read out in his absence. It is imperative that the Colne neighbourhood plan proceeds without amendment, which would inevitably delay its adoption. A delay would give precedence to the Pendle Local Plan Part 2, establishing planning and other policies that are far less beneficial to Colne. Its needs and the aspirations of Colne residents. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is John Birchenough. Are you there, John?
Yes, yeah. Is that okay, sound?
Yeah, you've got 2 minutes.
Yeah, thank you. Good evening, Council, and thank you for the opportunity to speak at this important meeting. I feel that the draft Colne neighbourhood plan is good for the whole of Colne. It has been consulted on twice within the whole of Colne, and it's now in its home straight after nearly 5 years of work. Now, this has involved many of you in this meeting and several who are out there on Zoom. It's now become a race against the Pendle plan, and we must stay ahead with it. If we do not, it will be bad for the whole of Colne. I've been involved with Lidget and Beyond for many years, and although I do not live next door to the Rough nor the Lidget Triangle, I have worked hard and given my time to protect them both. A Colne plan is the way for all my efforts and those of hundreds of others to finally get the protection for what remains of the Rough and for the various other green spaces at different locations within Colne. As well as time, fighting applications when you're not in control of your town's destiny costs a lot of money. The appeal for the Rough cost us tens of thousands of pounds, and many people took time off work and gave up holidays, etc., to play their part at the appeal back into August 2016. We worked as a team, and that was critical. And it's now critical that all of you work together to finalise the draft Colne plan as quickly as you can, so that Colne, which I'm sure you all want, will be in control of its own destiny. There's a lot of debate, both in and out of the working group, between the parties, between including and excluding sites over the above 5 years. But that becomes meaningless when, as we all know, Pendle planners will say yes to any and every development on a greenfield site, no matter where it may lay. And you should be aware and be very careful that the new Pendle Plan Part 2, it reinforces this ability. If the plan is delayed, my big concern is that it will probably be abandoned, given the amount of extra work and extra money that will be needed to be spent. And note that this extra work will not even make the plan any better for the whole of Colne. Instead, all of Colne will be subject to Pendle planning decisions forever, and our town will be given the extra target from Nelson and Dryfield when housing developments there do not take place. And this will be much more development and loss of green space in Colne, and our hands will be tied. So I urge councillors to follow the guidance from Kirkwells and to support the working group to finalise the Colne plan quickly. And I also urge the working group to keep up the good work for the benefit of the whole of Colne. Thank you.
Thank you, John. Next speaker is David Alvin, who is a Pendlebury councillor. Do we have David Alvin? Mr. Alvin?
Hello? Can you hear me, Chair?
Yes, I can. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you.
Carry on.
Good evening. I'm David Albin, the new Borough Councillor for Vivery Bridge, and it astounds me that this neighbourhood plan was started in October 2016, nearly 5 years ago. The formal consultation under Regulation 14 ended on the 8th of January of this year. So why are we not on Regulation 50 now? Because that is a natural progression. You should not be squeezing in and out different pieces of land at will. It all seems very unprofessional. What's the sense of having a system if people don't keep to it? This neighbourhood plan is so important to protect our green spaces for us and our future generations. If we don't do that, we are letting ourselves and our children down. We will run out of green spaces. So please support the working group to finalise the neighbourhood plan. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Alvin. Thank you. Our next speaker is Richard Thorley. Mr. Thorley, are you there? Mr. Thorley?
No, that's Jerry, but maybe it's just that he's there.
Hello.
Mr. Foley?
Yes, can you hear me now?
Yes, yes, thank you very much.
Okay. Yeah, thank you for allowing me to speak. Yeah, I think I would like to reiterate a few of the comments that's already been made. Very supportive of the process, but time is running out. Let's please get on and get this plan in place to stop Pendle Borough Council getting their plan in place to overtake us. I have a specific interest in the Barrowford Road playing fields and Spinney. I'm representing 42 members in a formally constituted group looking closely at this site. In the existing draft plan, it is protected for sports and recreation. However, on a meeting on the 10th of March 2021, behind closed doors, with the landowner and their planner, there is a danger resulting from that meeting that the status in the draft could be overturned and it could be allocated for building. I asked for a meeting to put the locals' point of view, just as the landowner was allowed to put their point of view, but I was refused. I was also refused access to the data that was presented at that meeting, some of which came from Pendle Borough Council. The reason I wanted access to that data is because data and evidence that Pendle Borough Council have supplied to me in relation to this piece of land has proved to be inaccurate. And some of that information came personally from the Chief Executive Officer. So following that, the good news is that a lot of data and evidence has since been gained. That has now been collated and provided, and I have been assured that that is going to receive full attention by the officers at Pendle Borough Council, because it does relate to planning matters, and that will then be fed back to the working group at the Colne Neighbourhood Plan, and hopefully we'll be able to save this fantastic facility for the community. I have been assured only today that it will be taken to the Policy and Resources Committee. So I urge the working group to not be in a rush to put it down for building. The other good news is that I understand that all future Neighbourhood Plan Working Group meetings will be public. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Thornley. Thank you. The next speaker is Sharon Dale.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, thank you.
Yeah, great. Oh, I'll start. I just want to agree with what's been said previously, and I'll try not to repeat it. So I'm a property journalist, and I know that neighbourhood plans offer an incredible amount of protection from unwanted development on green spaces while protecting heritage buildings and other assets. The process, as you know, is really long and bureaucratic, and that's why making unnecessary changes to it at this very late stage will delay its legal adoption by months. So it's not a 2-minute job. And the Pendle plan will supersede it, and developers will have a field day. They're queuing up, shovels at the ready. Lensures has got protection. I know that's something that people are worried about within the Colne plan by virtue of its location outside the settlement boundary in open countryside, and because of the long range views analysis. I just wanted to add that you as councillors are voted in to represent us, the electorate, and do your best for Colne. And I know that many of you do that, all of you do that. But if this plan fails to be adopted quickly with no delay, then you will be judged and the consequences of your actions will be there for us all to see. You know, when people ask why our fields are being carpeted with new builds, the answer will be that you decided to gamble on the future and delay the plan rather than secure our future. So just speaking from the heart, you know, I and many others who love this town and its green spaces, because that's what make, you know, that they make Colne special, are praying that you're going to do the right thing and push this plan through immediately without any delay. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much. Our next speaker is Janine Snowden.
Okay. Hello.
Hello, thank you.
Can you hear me? Anybody hear me?
Yes.
Am I on?
Yes.
Okay. Right. Well, first of all, thank you for allowing me an opportunity to speak at council here tonight, because I'm really concerned that the draft Colne neighbourhood plan may never actually be realised. And I'm not an expert, I'm not even involved with the working group. But one thing I do know is that neighbourhood plans are very complex, highly specialised, legally binding pieces of legislation. And something that I learned whilst campaigning for awareness of the Pendle-wide plan is that the long-term implications of seemingly innocent changes are very often damaging and not plain to see. So really what I want to do is just think for a moment about the CNP being stopped to consider local green space designation, or simply put, adding more land now that wasn't previously considered. Well, first of all, I want to know if it would still meet the expected standards when externally examined. Would the examiner question the validity of the plan? Would it still be a legally strong and binding document in accordance with the principles set out in the National Planning Policy Framework? Would the evidence-based reports that the green space allocations have been based on at the moment, would they be seen as flawed if so much alteration has to take place? Would anyone still have any enthusiasm left to get it up and running and made before the Pendle Part 2 plan is in place, which, as we know, is very important? These are the real issues, not whether more green spaces can actually be added, but what trying to add these green spaces will actually result in doing. Also of concern to me is the fact that a lot of public money has been invested so far. How much more money will this cost, and where will the extra money come from? Is Colne Town Council spending my money in a responsible way? Is it actually justifiable? Why are we even considering trying to add protected green spaces now at this late stage? And by doing so, could we consider such an act as negligence? So thank you for listening to my own opinions on this matter, and I pray that common sense will prevail. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Snowden. Thank you. Our next speaker is Caroline Spencer-Palmer.
Hello, thank you for letting me speak. I must say that I am here because I've been championing the Lenches since 1999. This is the document that we produced for the council 23 years ago. And it's a really precious and important area of land. The previous water bailiff actually wanted it to be designated as a nature reserve, and felt that it actually merited designation as a site of special scientific interest. It's got an incredibly rich patchwork of habitats: meadows, woodland, ponds, stream, marsh, scrubland. There are great crested newts in the ponds and in the stream, and there are freshwater oysters that he described as the size of dinner plates. It has an incredible amenity value. It is half of Colne's back garden. 1/3 of people who live in Waterside don't have any private transport. It is their back garden and it is used extensively. I mean, the network of footpaths is quite incredible. It's been used an awful lot more, particularly during lockdown. And it's really important for people's physical and mental health. And it's a fantastic view, both from the view of Colne from the Lenches is fantastic. I say it's like the San Gimignano of Britain. It's a fantastic view. The profile is extraordinary. And actually it's a fantastic view from the centre of Colne. And in fact, the best view of all is from the council chamber in Colne Town Hall. I'm desperate for it to be protected. I want it to be protected in any way that is possible. If you can assure me, absolutely guarantee that the Lenches would not be desecrated by adopting the Colne neighbourhood plan, then I would agree to that. But I'm nervous because it's not actually designated as an open space. I beg you to include the Lenches in the Colne neighbourhood plan as a protected green space. And I don't see why this should take, you know, an inordinate amount of time to do so. Thank you.
Thank you, Caroline. The next speaker is Julie Fontaine-Grist.
Hello.
Hello.
Hello. Hello. I'm really sorry. I can't hear you very well, so I hope you can hear me. Thank you. Thank you very much for allowing me to speak. I'm speaking really unknowingly in support of Andrew and Caroline. I don't live in Waterside. However, I would like to echo what they've said. My concern surrounds the mental and physical well-being of the adults and the children living in the poor area of Waterside. The Waterside ward in Pendle is one of the most deprived wards in England. And housing in Waterside rarely have gardens, and the predominant colour is grey. Grey yards, grey streets. What they do have at the moment is a vista, as Caroline touched on, and it's available within a few short steps, and that is Lenches. The Lenches fields have historically been a place to get fresh air and exercise, and if we remove this, then that fresh air, that green space, and that visually, mentally gratifying area will be gone. And what the people of Waterside will have in its place is the housing, congestion, because more housing brings congestion, so that, yes, people who move into the development will need cars, and that's potentially 200 extra cars on the 200 extra homes that will be built, and consequently more CO2 emissions. What I would personally love to see that more thought is given to one of the poorest wards in the country. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. The next speaker is Emma Hartley. Do we have Emma Hartley?
Hello.
Hello, Emma.
Have I not gone big? Hi, thanks for listening to me. I'd just like to, can you turn that off? Sorry, we're having a bit of echo in here. I'd just like to start by saying that I think we're in a really sad situation here, where local residents are left desperately trying to protect land near them from development through various different plans, charities, schemes, whilst government planning laws seem determined to concrete over our countryside in pursuit of debatable housing targets that available data seems to suggest we don't really need, particularly in the north of England. I'm an environmentalist with a social conscience, and I could talk all night about my love for Lenches and why I think it would be both environmental and social injustice if it becomes a suburban housing estate in the middle of open countryside ruining forever one of Colne's most iconic landscapes, while depriving wildlife and residents of an essential green lung. I've only got 2.5 minutes, so I hope you'll all read the report, which I think has been emailed through to you, which I hope conveys some of the love that Watersiders have for Lenchers and explains how it's demonstrably special to the community it serves. Local artists have regularly painted the Lenchers. In fact, a painting of it hangs in Colne Town Hall. And in fact, I have a picture of it here. I know it's only small, but it's in the pamphlet that we've emailed to everybody. I'd also just like to say that Pendle Borough Council Plan Part 2 allows no green space allocations for Colne, which is why Colne Neighbourhood Plan is our only opportunity as a town to protect our green spaces for the next generation. What better legacy for us to leave as a collective than the opportunity for all to benefit from a connection with nature and the physical and mental health benefits of ecotherapy. Waterside is in the top 10% most deprived areas in the UK. Car ownership is low and most people live in terraced homes with no gardens. Friends of the Earth consider Waterside one of the unlucky ones in terms of access to parks and gardens, and Lenchers is Waterside's most important remaining green space. There's more love for Lenchers than even I could have imagined. Many people have shared stories of swimming in the dams, fishing, nature gazing, kite flying and sledging in the winter. Local historian Jeff Cranby talks of a memorable school nature trip to Lenchers, and Lord Street School held their Easter egg hunt there this year. Many also speak of the mental health benefits of just being up Lenchers. The view of Lenchers from the terraced streets of Colne also provides a visual amenity, and it's an important area for wildlife, including barn owls, kestrels, buzzards and deer. The trees, which we all call Tony's trees, were protected by a TPO, which was one of the last actions taken as a councillor by the late Lord Tony Greaves. This tree line, which is part of Colne's green infrastructure, is one of Tony's legacies to the people of Colne. And I have a Pendle Borough Council employee who's told me that those trees are coming down over his dead body. So you can see why I have a huge responsibility to protect this land. Colne Neighbourhood Plan will be in place till 2030. We must ensure it represents the wishes of all Colne residents, a true neighbourhood plan. We all have a role to play to provide equity of access to green space for all, and we need to protect as much green space as we can, including Lenchers, whilst we have this golden opportunity. And I would just like to quickly add, everybody keeps telling me that Lenchers will be protected by the Colne Neighbourhood Plan because it's in open countryside, but I would just like to state that Live One in the core strategy means that sustainable sites outside the designated settlement boundary can be used to contribute to the 5-year land supply until Pendle Plan Part 2 is adopted. So as far as I understand, and I've been told this by a professional planning consultant, Lenchers would not be safe, no open countryside would be safe because Live One will always prevail. The only way to guarantee protection is green space protection, and this Colne Neighbourhood Plan only gives green space protection to literally one area. Most of the areas are parks and cemeteries that aren't going to be built on anyway. So why don't we take this opportunity to protect as much green space as we can for the next generation? And thank you for listening to me.
Thank you, Emma. The next speaker is Jerry Stanford.
Thank you. I'm a volunteer member of the Neighbourhood Plan Working Group and chair of the Colne Community Safety Partnership. For the Colne Plan, we undertook an initial sift of all green spaces by ward, each represented by a councillor with local interest groups like Waterside NAG and Lidget and Beyond. Sites could be greenbelt or open spaces under Pendle designations. They could be biological or geological heritage sites, or they could have special protected status under the Pendle RPLP. That means protected for development, not from development. Not good. Fields around the edge of town that are simply defined as open countryside have such a categorization under national planning guidance, and the Cone Plan excludes them, as should the Pendle Plan, but it does not do it effectively. All proposed sites were reviewed by the working group and Kirkwells to ensure compliance with all the requirements of paragraph 100 of the NPPF. Planning guidance clamps down on backdoor protection where it's not justified, and an inspector would see through any last-minute adjustments. Extra advice from locality was that even if a space is green belt or even a nature reserve, the designation could be changed by Pendle in the future, and hence a double designation is now considered good practice. If the Cone Plan is delayed, we'd still be subject to Pendle planning decisions. With the current housing target of 298 a year and a housing land supply of only 4.6 years, every single development proposal would be recommended for approval, as the planning tilt will be in favour of development. The Rough, the Lenchers, South Valley Fields, in fact, almost anywhere. The old core Live 1 exception that sites outside the settlement boundary could be considered for development has been replaced in the new Pendle Plan Part 2. But the decision tree through Live 6, 7 and 8 states as a contingency that in the event of non-delivery of the housing target, any alternative site in the SHLA could come forward. However, with the Cone Plan finished first, our sustainable selection of brownfield sites would be developed and no other sites could be imposed on us. Cone needs to take control so that it can keep control.
Thank you, Jerry. Thank you very much. Our next speaker is Paul Foxley.
Thank you, Chair. I have served on the Neighbourhood Plan Working Group since its inception, and I can say with all certainty that a great deal of good work has been done over the past 5 years on the plan. That said, it's a simple fact that no plan will ever be absolutely perfect. But that said, it's very clear to me that any sensible opportunities to make major changes, as are being proposed, have well passed. Now is not the time to be tinkering with a nearly completed plan. I believe we'd be very foolish to throw everything up in the air now. I say we, it wouldn't be me, because it's not my decision. It's the councillors of Colne Town Council who are going to make this decision. But I believe that throwing things up in the air now would jeopardise much of what the neighbourhood plan set out to achieve in the first place. As a result, if that were to happen, and if the Colne Town Council councillors failed to ensure that the neighbourhood plan is progressed to regulation 15 without undue delay, frankly, I wouldn't be prepared to continue my support for the plan. Let's be clear, proceeding with the plan without further delay will not represent a failure to protect the Lenchers green space. It will do the best that Colne can do to both protect and direct protect existing green spaces, historic buildings, etc., and to direct new development to appropriate places within Colne. Thank you.
Thank you, Paul. The next speaker is Simon Hartley. Do we have Simon Hartley?
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Okay, thanks for allowing me to speak. I think the land at Lenches, land P152 and Valley P001.
Excuse me, I've got another device in the house. It's got a lot of feedback.
Is that better?
Yes.
Okay, sorry. Just put the Lenches P152 and South Valley P001 should be added to the Colne neighbourhood plan as protected green space. It's a mystery why Waterside, which is in the top 10% of deprived areas in the UK, has also been deprived of any protected green space. They say they've been at it nearly 5 years and this has just been completely ignored. I'm told this is due to them not being put forward during the consultation. This consultation took place during lockdown when most people were focused on staying alive, keeping their jobs or saving their businesses. I work less than 100 yards from Colne Town Hall and myself and over 30 staff and their friends and family knew nothing about this plan or consultation. I live in Waterside and didn't receive any notification at all. It turns out there was only 74 people that commented on the consultation and none of them were from Waterside. Yet when in March, when we informed the local residents about the plan, over 150 people wrote to the town hall asking for Lenches to be a protected green space. On the Colne neighbourhood plan map of Colne, showing the proposed green spaces, Waterside has been left completely unprotected, which is probably why Gleeson's have been in discussions with the local councillor on plans for 212 homes. They say it's out of the settlement area in countryside and it will be protected, but there's already been large machinery on there. JCBs, bulldozers, digging huge craters in preparation, retrieving data, for the huge scheme that they obviously have knowledge that probably will go ahead. All this despite being away from the settlement area in open countryside. Looking at the comments from the consultation from Bart and Wilmer and Tim Webber from Barnfield Construction, they commented that the chosen brownfield sites, in their opinion, most of them were unviable for development. This means that all countryside, including the Lenches, is at risk from speculative planning applications. The South Valley has already had 2 massive housing estates built, and these are Waterside's only 2 remaining green spaces. So what 152 and 001, that's the Lenches and the South Valley, need urgent protection, but not just for the residents, but for the wealth of wildlife that rely on it as their home and creates a much needed wildlife corridor. It's a lovely summer's evening tonight, so take a glance out of the window over Exchange Street and take a look at the Lenches, surrounded by Tony's trees. It's the beautiful backdrop of Colne and needs protecting for future generations.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah. Thank you. We have another statement together. Can the town clerk read that out, please?
Sent in on behalf of Naomi and Terry New. Dear councillors, as residents of Waterside, we are worried that if you vote to delay the Colne neighbourhood plan as an extra green spaces, that you will make things worse for us in Waterside. We are an elderly couple who do not drive, but we walk to Gig Hill. We know a lot of work has been done to try and save Gig Hill from development, and if you vote to delay the Colne plan, it will have to be redone to conform with the Pendle Local Plan Part 2. And that will mean Gig Hill will have to be added as a reserved site for building on. We don't understand how the way the whole plan makes things better in terms of green spaces. It seems to put them more at risk and gives developers more time to get their plans through to build in places like Rangers. Yours, Naomi Kennedy.
Thank you. Our last speaker is Joshua Ride. Is Joshua there?
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, I can, Joshua.
So I live on near Lenches, and I just want to say a few things. So I have a dog, and I quite oftenly go onto the Lenches fields to walk him, and there is quite a lot of people that are there. There's lots of wildlife, and it is a space that can be seen, you know, through all of Colne, well, most of it. And I think building on it will ruin a lot of the, you know, countryside that makes Colne really, because there is, you know, a lot of brilliant green spaces around, and Lenches is one of those. So I think taking that away will impact the town more than people think. And, you know, as a young person, it is something that helps with mental health. And, you know, I know a lot of people that do go onto Lenches to go for walks, and especially over lockdown, it's been a place that's been used quite a lot. So, yeah, that's really all. But it is a place that I think needs to be, from a young person's perspective, protected, because it is something that really helps the public.
Thank you, Joshua. Thank you very much for coming and talking to us tonight. And that ends the public forum session this evening. Well, we'll have to next item. Are we allowed to comment on any of that? We're allowed to comment, yes. Where I live, in the most deprived ward in Pendle, as it's been described, I can see Lenches from my backyard, and the last thing I ever wanted was that field to be developed on. What I do object to is the way we are described in Waterside as having grey, dull backyards and streets. That is not this at all. And people that haven't got cars, on four cars, these streets, and I passed the fair part from Bridge Street through to Pond Lane, I think, or a bit further, and the little bits on the road where they are on terrace houses. And all these streets are full of cars, full to bursting. And a lot of the backyards are akin to Kew Gardens, I tell you, including mine. And my next door neighbour grows fruit trees in pots. And somebody higher up from me has actually planted a lawn, and I don't mean an artificial grass, a proper lawn. And they have raised beds, and next door have raised beds, and that's just on my street. So I do object to us being described as living in the most deprived. You know, people that can do make an effort. I know that's nothing to do with what's going on, but I just wanted to make that point. Okay. Thank you.
I just want to say that I live in Waterside, and I commented on the plan, but it's absolutely not true that none of the 74 people who commented live in Waterside, because I commented, and I do live on Waterside. I would like to agree with you, Sir Marguerite, that tonight these voters being added is a mystery to me. Clearly, there's nobody in here that doesn't value Lenches. Yet, how can it be that after 4 years, it's not committee? lecture was intended to be a taking time. Really, if it's that central and that important, how can it have been overlooked? This is, I'm finding mystified as to why not here. This consultation was run properly, so much so that Kendal Borough Council admired the way it was run and used it as a model for their own. It went on longer than it should have done. It was well publicised. All the shops were given posters, including MRP for everyone. Why on earth would they waited to now? They missed the deadline. If this woman has been fighting for lectures for 30 years, surely she should have some awareness of 4 or 5 years of effort by people here, what was going on. And surely the water supply representatives on this group should have come up with these cases at the appropriate time. Not now. His Hill is doomed if you vote to delay the plan, because it will put it in mind Kendal Town Part 2, and it will have to go in as a reserve site for building. That's why I'm working so hard on an alternative way to protect this hill. I accept it would meet the green criteria. You would look stupid if you thought this really now. It would fail the criteria. And that is why people are working to try and find a water protection. And I just can't believe that anybody in here cannot see what a ludicrous situation at this point, what are we doing?
Well, this isn't a meeting where we can make a decision, that'll be for the council meeting next week. But obviously you can comment on, but I don't know what the reason is for this, so,
Nobody knows.
pardon?
Nobody knows what the reason is. It's a mystery. How can something be so central, so important, so crucial to the well-being, so much part of our youth, and yet somebody ignores it all the way? Sorry.
Yes, Pat?
She's not the only one who's ignored it. Everybody that goes to those meetings is ignored it, including the people who run the meetings. What do you think is happening? What's happening?
That's my
You
point.
representative board.
Is that the question?
Yes, sure.
Right. My response to that makes some notes. I'll respond to you first. Obviously, it's a group, so they're all put into a box, all of these suggestions. And the people who are from those areas, like Jonathan, for example, would look at places at Hallsbury. And so they were all put into the box. And as you know, there was an informal consultation in 2018. And over the time of the plan, 500, I think they told me, 500 responses have been received from members of the public. And that is an awful lot of responses. I hear from Michael Weller that a typical neighbourhood plan would get something like 24. So, it isn't necessarily one person's job to put something in, it's a collective. But then that collective idea was taken out home on 2 occasions and very, very heavily publicised. But I'd like to sort of come to the critical point here. The people who've spoken tonight, they're hoping to protect a couple of areas in Waterside. So I think we need to look at 2 things. Has the neighbourhood plan done anything wrong in the way that the consultation was run? Have we followed the process of neighbourhood planning? And I'll come to that second. And we need to look at the best possible way to protect what is dear to people in Kent. We all have different opinions. Some people may want to protect allotments. Some people may want to protect tennis courts. Some people want to protect old buildings, that's me. Other people want to protect lovely walks. Other people want to protect countryside. So what we did was we created a policy that we would build mainly on brownfield land within the settlement boundary. And that policy means that we put an enormous amount of sites into that pot. That is sifted down. If we have the County Regulation 15, most of you in this room don't know that. That pot of like 700 properties is sifted down. We're now on about 300, aren't we? Something like that. But really, our actual target for housing, officially, assuming everything will be built that we've given permission for, is 1. Now, obviously, if we went to the planning section, so we've chosen 1, let's say the garage site next to the landlord law address, we look ridiculous. We obviously have to create that buffer, and that's what we're doing. And that puts us in the position, like Chorlton is in the position, which is that it's allocated sites and it's past a planning inspector. We are lucky that neighbourhood plans exist, because you all know, especially ones used within borough councillors, that the planning process for a local planning authority is far more complicated, and the hurdles are far more difficult to clear. So we're lucky because we're considered to be this grassroots people who all live in the town. We're not professional planners, though we can put in expertise where we need to. Because of that, our hurdles are very much lower. All we have to do is do something called meet the basic conditions. Pendle has a much higher target to reach. So we have to be in conformity with the National Planning Policy Framework, and we have to be in conformity with Pendle, which we were when we went out to consultation on the 26th of October. The consultation wasn't until Christmas. It was 11 and a half weeks. I know, I did all the Zoom meetings. So, and I did 11 of them. So, that was the position of our plan. If we now decided to do Regulation 14 again, we would have to rewrite the plan, because we would see Pendle's attempt at local plan part 2. That local plan that has no green spaces, it would be a major undertaking, and it would see us doing things that would be in contravention of our policies. So if I can come back to Chorlton and tell you what's happened there. Before their plan was even made, before it was even made, it's passed inspection, but it hadn't been made, a developer put in a planning application for developing some houses outside the village. And Neil Watson told me that planning application, if we just looked at the Pendle Core Strategy and the MPPF, would have passed. It went to appeal. I can share with you the appeal document, and the appeal document states that even though the Chorlton plan was not made, it's passed examination, it was therefore given total planning weight, and because it wasn't allocated in the Chorlton neighbourhood plan, that planning application would have passed had we been sitting here at the Coombe Area Committee listening to it. We'd have seen that word recommendation approved on the papers. That was turned down to appeal by the planning inspector because of the strength of the Chorlton neighbourhood plan. I went on the Teams meeting with Pendle for rural areas. And I was the only person that went on it. So we like flew over the place, you know, we looked all over Pendle, and it was time to kill. And as they flew virtually over Chorlton, they just merrily remarked to me, well, of course, we can't touch Chorlton, can we? That plan is made. And for those of you that aren't on the neighbourhood plan working group, you probably don't realise, and there's no criticism of me saying this, why should you? You know, like tomorrow, I'm going to a webinar in the afternoon, which is legal challenges to neighbourhood plans. You know, I am nerdy on neighbourhood plans. It is sort of now become my job. So you don't know this, but essentially, if we're a tier 1 service centre, which means that we have to take 70% of all the development in Pendle. That's fair enough. That means there's less for the villages and the rural areas. We take a share, and at the start of our process, it was 1,003, and I already explained to you that with all the permissions that we've given, we've done very well. But ultimately, Pendle still has that 298 annual target, and ultimately, as was it Jerry who talked about the exceptions with 1? Ultimately, if that is not fulfilled, they would look for the unfulfilled target from the other towns Briarfield, Nelson, to be given to Cone. So we could do our 1,003, and then we could be given, worst case scenario, another 1,000. And what the neighbourhood plan would stop is that. And that is worth so much to us. We could be in a position like Chorlton. But it's not a job at the moment going back to Regulation 14. It's a huge, huge amount of work. I'm not just talking about Virginia. I'm not just talking about the financial costs. It's a huge amount of work, and it's more uncertainty. And it's quite possible that the plan will never see the light of day. So it's like we've got so close to protecting our buildings, our sporting facilities, for doing positive things in the town, of the town centre. We've got so close to it now. I can come, I see it's go to the meetings, give the update, and it would be inappropriate for me to see it then. We've got so close. So for us to suddenly decide to backtrack and put all of that at risk, which is what we would be doing, would be awful. So one thing that Emma Hartley said was golden opportunity. We have a golden opportunity. And I was really persuaded by the speakers talking about those signs. And I do not know whether they passed paragraph 100. I suspect someone would, someone wouldn't. I don't know. But actually, it's probably more sensible to even look at that. Because if we're serious in this room protecting them, this is the way to protect them. Not stopping the plan from going back however many months, but by looking at what the plan could do, things that aren't designated. Because we are only designating buildings within the settlement boundary. Everything that's open countryside is protected, just like it would be in Chorlton. So that development came in Chorlton, and it was rejected because of the neighbourhood plan. So the golden opportunity, weirdly, usually, when you're in a council meeting, you have to upset some people. You have to say, well, ultimately, I support this planning application, and that's going to upset these people. Or I don't support it, and it's going to upset these people. If you go for the neighbourhood plan, you're not upsetting anybody at all, because it is the most logical way to protect everything, really. Green spaces, open countryside, buildings. It is the most logical way. And we, at the moment, with current planning law, which is in flux, have this gift. We could get in there and take it. And I just personally be absolutely gutted if we didn't take it, because it will be a golden opportunity to protect what the speakers who want to turn the clock back, we still have that golden opportunity because the plan does that. Unlike the local plan part 2 for Pendle, which then says any site in the slot can be considered. That's what they call these reasonable alternatives. If the local plan part 2 comes forward, that's still a risk. And the only way to add that extra layer is to have the neighbourhood plan instead. So that's what I would say there. It's an opportunity. Weirdly, if we don't go back and carry on moving forward, we should please both sets of people. It's just that, unless you're really into neighbourhood planning, it might not look like that to you. You might think it's not specifically mentioned, but in fact, it doesn't need to be, because anything outside the settlement boundary is protected. Talking about the consultation was done to the nth degree. We had banners across the website, you saw in the papers there, enormous engagement. Usually only 180 people go to our website, bit tumbleweedy, sorry. 2,000 people looking at all this detail. I had so many emails and people contacting me. There's no way we were hanging our right under a bushel. It's not an accident that, for example, all the people on Cone Lancaster now and then wrote in about the buildings, because people care. You've got to remember, this neighbourhood plan isn't just about green spaces or building sites. They're really big parts of what we do. But that's not all it's about. It's about so much more than that. And lots of people did engage, much more, many more than Kirkland's used to. And that's down to us, down to the officers and down to, frankly, me. Press release every single week in the Cone Times, loads of social media, tweets, stuff on Facebook. We were just on it all the time. 11 and a half weeks is a long time. It wasn't just over Christmas. It started on the 26th of October. So I really feel that that is a very strong point. If you're doing a statutory thing, which is what we are, did we follow the process? We didn't just follow the process, we had a gold-plated process. We did it really well. I'm very proud of that consultation. There's been something about Waterside doesn't have any sites in the local plan. Obviously, Waterside doesn't exist as an actual ward anymore. But if you look at the local green spaces in the neighbourhood plan, Waterside has 8 of them, which is like most of them, really, actually. And a 9th has been put forward by Alice's mother. So that was put forward within the consultation time, and it will come forward. So there will be 9 in Waterside. I don't think. Yeah, sorry.
No, I'm just thinking, I'm not really an expert on planning, and I'm just thinking that if this went forward to the next stage,
yes,
and it became sort of our plan, it's until that 2030.
That's it. So I was thinking that's not a living document.
If something happened, was enough, could we make an amendment?
Yes.
Yes. Between now and 2030. So it's not a, if we do it now, it doesn't mean we can't.
No, it's like doing your big weekly shop. I think this is actually quite a good analogy. It's like doing your big weekly shop, and then one day, you know what, I should put that on the list after all. I'll nip out and get it. So Trawden are in that position. So now they are at their leisure just adding extra historical non-designated heritage assets. That's what they're focusing on, and they're adding them now. And nobody's saying you can't add them now. It's a living document, and it's something that we would have to do. We've got to have a main plan. We have to have a strategy for, I don't know, 6 monthly updates or something like that. So that is true, Mary. But you can see it's not the focus for me. The focus for me is getting over the hurdles that we still face. Regulation.
I just wanted to know whether it was.
Yeah.
It was whatever you said in 2020, 2021. You couldn't.
Yeah.
Make it any different.
So just looking at a couple of notes from some of the speakers. Yeah, some of our sites, especially the ones in the side, currently as they stand, are not viable. But some of you don't know this, but Gina knows this. I've won a sort of grant from the government where a specialist person is working on this to use what's the word? Looking at sort of non-tangible things. I mean, they are tangible, like ours. But looking at things that people will value but that aren't necessarily to do with money. It could be educated apprentices, and they'll give some weight to that because they've worked on the site. So there are different ways to make these sites be stacking up, and they're working on that now. I'm not saying it'll be like a magic wand for all of them, but as I've stated to you, we don't need all of our sites. We decided to look at all of them, put them into a pot, and then we down select. And in addition, Handel is doing a big bid for the Levelling Up Fund. Of course, it's not guaranteed, but it is £20 million. I'm working on that right now, and that goes in on the 18th of June, and we find out in September. We don't know, of course, but that would be absolutely marvellous in terms of regeneration. Almost all of that would be focused on one side, and it would just be totally transformational for Cone. We don't know whether we're going to get it, but it would be amazing. And the people that we're working with on viability for the neighbourhood plan have told me that they are expecting these sites to appear in that Levelling Up bid. They told me that the 2 ends in central government know about Cone, which is pretty amazing. So I think that moving forward will give both sides their golden opportunity, but also will protect Cone. That's why all of us sitting in this room, we wouldn't bother wasting our time sitting here if we didn't really care about Cone. And actually, had I known how much work this was going to be when it started in 2016, I would have started it. Frankly, I like that. It's so much work. I can't tell you, my computer is just full of neighbourhood plan. Neighbourhood plan is every single day in my life at the moment. Every day. Even the weekends, I'm doing neighbourhood plan. I wouldn't have started it, but now, it's like on the last lap of the 10,000 metres, that's where I'm standing. So why wouldn't we push forward? I'm very, very happy to ask questions for people who have been involved.
Can I just ask?
Well,
was Lancashire the initial dollop that you threw together and chose?
No, it never came up. Passive notes. I never heard that word. No, she's not.
I think that's largely because it was actually outside federal ground. So it's like any sort of field, you know, in countryside.
Yeah.
So there are largely more, there are plenty of fields around, obviously.
People, yeah, definitely.
If you have a farmer who wants to sell that field, he's bound to talk to the developer.
Alice had a hand up earlier.
Yeah, I just, I'm sorry, Brian. I was just going to say that it's not really anything to do with this, but I am still a Waterside town councillor, so the area of Waterside does exist for me. I want to thank Sarah because she's done a fantastic job with the neighbourhood plan. However, I am concerned that the consultation, although it was done by the book, I'm not saying it wasn't, it was extended, we did do it in the middle of the pandemic. And if you have the notes that we were given, then it says the town council had a website and it was put on the website. It was done through emails. There were 11 online sessions, which is great, but those didn't really include those people that are not on the internet. And that was the problem. When I was able to go out and talk to people, walk around the ward, then I got the feedback that perhaps we should have got at the time of the consultation. And that is the issue really. Everything was done online. And I remember in one of the last meetings, I asked, could we do some leafleting so that we could do all the houses? However, it was said, we haven't got the money to do that. But we got posters, so we did posters. Unfortunately, we were running around putting posters into shops the very day before all the non-essential shops closed. So in a way, that was a waste of time because people were not going out to look at this. And I believe that's the reason why these sites have come up so late, because we weren't, as councillors, able to walk around and ask people about the issues. Also, a lot of people didn't realise that there were 3 documents. They only believed that it was just a formal consultation document, this one. They didn't realise that there was a local green space one, or even a heritage one. So that was another issue that I discovered as I walked around after, in March, that was when it was. So I'd just like to say that we all want to protect these green spaces, everyone, but I'm just concerned that the consultation was not done at the right time. We have the pandemic, who would have thought it? So we've lost a year and a half, really, of our working.
Yes, Brian.
Councillor Ehrlich mentioned this evening that she put comments in, I know she put comments in about development on Ross Lane in Big Hill. Now, I looked at the documents actually for Lancashires, and I think it's actually called something like Lancashires Road, Knots Lane, the development itself. So I was wondering whether Sarah could have a look there and see whether the land at Lancashires is encompassed by what Councillor Hill said.
I don't remember saying anything about that. I might have done. I just know I did comment, and I was just trying to set the record straight that a person was making an accusation that not a single person walked by on it. I think I just responded to plan.
come to that, but I've got the gist of it. Anybody else got anything to say? We're not going to be voting or making any decisions tonight. That's good.
Once again, the facilities are here in here is appalling. I couldn't hear what Liz was saying. I could not hear much of what Sarah was saying, or I got the gist of it from here, Brian. That's how it is.
Yes, it is.
Unfortunately, it's not helpful when you're sat in a meeting and you can't hear what everybody's saying.
We're doing the best we can. We have got a microphone, so we can hear me. But we will. This will have to be decided, so we can't keep kicking it out. So next Tuesday, for the meeting, there is it's on the agenda whether to get it progressed or not. So that's. Is there anything else anyone wants to say? Or yes, David.
Chairman, can I just make two comments? I wouldn't normally get comment because, as most of you know, probably Sarah more than everyone, all the way through this neighbourhood plan, I've got to get the back seat and let the representatives from the various boards put the things together in the meeting, if you call it that, and then decide, what should go forward and what shouldn't. And I get the back seat, get down with it. But I think it needs to be said that one thing Alice said was that we consulted at the wrong time, and we did it when we were in lockdown. All right, we did consult when we were in lockdown, but we consulted it twice as long as we needed to. And also, you don't need to know it. If we'd have delayed and said, we can't have consultation because we're in lockdown, technically we are still in that position, and would have been a year and a half behind Pendle Borough Council's plan then, because we still would have consulted. Because we wouldn't have got into a situation yet where we can have fully begin to do a proper consultation. So, although it wasn't ideal, I think we did the best we could out of the bad position that we were in. And I think that's fair to say that. And for everybody on the working group who pulled it all together, and the officers, I think we did the best we could under the circumstances. And regarding Bill's comment about the sounding either, we did have comments about it at the last council meeting. And I think it's fair to say that Naomi and Mark are probably now about that or possibly being able to resolve the situation, because we have got the price for brand new max all the way around, and they have to be wireless, because if you don't, we can't move the furniture away into various other functions. It is quite expensive, quite a lot too expensive actually, but there is the possibility of being able to provide us with a second-hand set that is in good order, and I think it's fair to say, correct me if I'm wrong, we're within a few days of knowing probably what we can have and at what price.
Yeah, I've asked that I have those prices before Tuesday full council so that I can bring it to you for approval or not. So we have also kept the induction loop for hearing, and that is working. So we are trying to get it sorted as quick as we can.
No, that's my point. I'm just thinking other people's focus a little bit, that might help.
I think a way round is the microphone that the chair has. Then another one. You could get at the table to pass the mic around. That would do more instant. And it would work. I have a system or that you can borrow. My microphone, I'm just trying to suggestions. But if you have a microphone, you can avoid it to walk around. I know you can't grab hold of it, but we can put it on the desk and you be able to speak and people will hear. Just a short-term solution. That's
I
it.
suggested it yesterday.
Thank you, Mark. Didn't hear yesterday.
Pat, were you wanting to speak?
No, actually, I didn't want to say sorry. I just said I've been asking for 15 years, that's all.
All right, right. Well, we've got the items.
You said, Chair, I'm not voting on anything tonight, so can you remind me why we're here?
It was to give the public a chance to give their views. People who thought they were going to do it at the last time and felt they were badly done to and wanted a chance to speak to councillors.
Right. And can I just help answer that question?
Yes.
Right, why? The neighbourhood plan working group was, well, consists and has consisted of ward councillors from all over the town. And each ward council was given their area. And unfortunately, when you work in a zone like that, you don't tend to look anywhere else. You look at your own thing. And you fully expect the people in that different ward to put forward signs from their area. And it is regrettable that Lancashire is not included. But also, unfortunately, was assigned in that time as 2 or 3 different councillors. And somehow it's like shit passing in the night in this, then it is regrettable.
Yeah.
And the problem with other places not included of that in this as well. I was representing Forcefield. I did my best to make sure that as much of Forcefield was included as possible. But because I was so focused on Forcefield, I didn't look at what I told because there are people designated to it. I thought that kind of answered your question.
Yes. Dorothy?
Yeah, at that time, for myself, I had a lot of personal stuff going on and I didn't get involved in it and I haven't been involved in it. But I would never, I would never have thought of Lancashire needing to be protected from building houses. If I look at that field from my back, rear backyard, I just would never have thought that that would ever have been considered because of where it is, the topography of it. I just want to be reminded.
I wasn't blaming anyone.
No, I'm just saying, it's just made me think now, if I'd been involved, I'm sure that wouldn't have been a piece of land that I would have been more concerned about. I mean, obviously I am now, as we all are in the area. But I couldn't have seen it with houses on it, anybody wanting to build there. But I realise it's different now.
I've got Councillor Howard Thomas and then Councillor Mann. Howard?
Part of the problem we're in is that generally the whole planning system from Whitehall downwards is in a mess because you've got so many competing bits with local plans, neighbourhood plans, strategic plans for this, that and the other, that until somebody somewhere comes up with a sensible view of planning, we're going to have these conflicts forever and a day. Unfortunately, the thing that we're short of is the thing that we're not making anymore, and that's land. So the pressure is on to spread outwards. The pressure here is not as bad as it is from Northampton down, where unfortunately that's where governments tend to set their housing policy and planning policy. They base it on what's happening in what's been traditionally called the whole county. But the whole thing is say, it is a mess. And we have to do the best with the tools that we are given. And the only tool that we have to have any influence on any meaningful influence on planning policy for Cone is through a neighbourhood plan. That's the only choice that we have, because even after the plan is adopted, the official planning authorities are still the county council for things like minerals and that type, and Pendle Council for the mundane run-of-the-mill extensions, etc. Whether Lynch's was put forward before or not, or by whom, is rather irrelevant at this stage. The whole reason it has become hot potato is that Gleeson's have gone on there and started poking about, to use a technical term. So people have become enthused and excited and worried about what is going to happen. And I'm afraid it was ever thus. Just suddenly make myself feel older than I am. But I sat in this room when members of the public were allowed in, and it has literally been standing room only, with lots of different planning applications and things that people are worried about, from soldier trees to lots of other planning applications. And what it boils down to is always there's an amount of NIMBY in it. But the closer the development gets to some areas, the more people in that area get excited about it and want to object to it. And you can't blame them for that. And I think that is the reason why Lynch's has come to the fore at a late stage, because Gleeson's have maybe seen the way the wind is blowing, that neighbourhood plan is coming along with, and they may be sound. They may also have seen that applications for part of the rough were granted, part furthest away from the existing settlement was lost on appeal. So we just have to look at it as to what each of us think is the best way to protect the town that we've either grown up in, lived in, moved to over the last however many years. And I think it boils down to each and everybody on this council looking at what they think is the best for the town. Is it to go with the neighbourhood plan as is? Do we amend it? Do we whatever? But I think between now, well, in a week, in the next 7 days, 6 days, we have to all think about what each of us think is the best way forward.
Thank you. I've got Alice to speak.
Yeah, I was hoping that the consultant would be here. He's waiting. He's waiting. Oh, excellent. I was just wondering if he could just elaborate on Sarah's point that we could put things back into the document if it went ahead as it is now, whether we would be able to put things
to the.
At a later date.
Could I quickly just come back to we bring in just on a couple of things, David? Of course, the main consultation, really, blue sky thinking, if you like, was 2018. You know, then we had massive banners everywhere. In most neighbourhood plans, that's the one that gets most members of the public out on radio manager, that gets most people, because it's people thinking outside the box. This one is a formal consultation, so it's just mainly looking at the detail. We found some mapping problems. It's looking at the detail, maybe the brief, another couple of buildings and an historic building. The 2018 one was a big one, that wasn't involved in COVID. Not doing it down Johnson, but I came up with Castle Road in your area. So we were all looking at, we were trying to look at green spaces in other places. And then responding to what Dorothy has to say, no, I wouldn't have looked at the Lynches because you have to walk to it, it's not adjacent to the settlement. And for that reason, and I didn't want to get into this, I don't think it would pass paragraph 100. But that's not the reason why we shouldn't consider it. We need to look at whether the process has been there. The best protection for the Lynches is the neighbourhood plan. It is the best protection for it. And trying to designate it as a green space might well be what's a fudge in any case. So, no, the Lynches, I don't think probably needs any extra protection. It's got that open countryside designation. It's outside the settlement boundary. Thanks.
Have we got to Mr. Wellock here?
Yes, good evening, thank you. Michael Wellock from Kirkwells, the consultant who has been advising the Town Council in the preparation of the neighbourhood plan. I think there have been a lot of very good contributions this evening, many of which show quite an informed knowledge of the planning process. But I think in terms of the neighbourhood plan, I think we need to go back to first principles in terms of why are the Town Council preparing a neighbourhood plan? And that is to set planning policy for Colne. Now, the danger, I think, if you diverge from the timetable you have in Appendix 3, which, ambitious though it is, would give you a plan at referendum sometime in 2022. I think the danger if you diverge from that at this point is you run the risk of having at best a delayed plan, at worst no plan at all. And in terms of setting planning policy for Colne, that does nothing for any site in Colne, the Lynches included, because ultimately you're saying nothing in terms of planning policy. You've nothing that would help defend any site in the town. But if you stick to the timetable, you would have a plan that sets planning policy for Colne. Indeed, one of the things that seems to have sparked this evening's meeting, and I do wonder if we'd have been having this debate if the Lynches and Gleeson's interest hadn't become known. If you have a made plan, indeed, if you have a submitted plan, it would benefit from the provisions of national planning policy, where in Colne, you wouldn't have to demonstrate a 5-year housing land supply that Pendle currently don't have. And I think Jerry said it was 4.6 years at the moment. You would only have to demonstrate a 3-year housing land supply. So automatically in Colne, and if you were defending a planning application on the Lynches or fighting an application on the Lynches, all of a sudden, Pendle's planning policies for Colne, in relation to housing, suddenly will no longer be out of date. And I think that's a really important consideration to bear in mind. In terms of the consultation, I hear this a lot, but in terms of what the town council carried out in very, very difficult circumstances, I don't think you have anything to reproach yourselves for in terms of how that consultation was handled. I think you got the number of responses that I would have expected. You got the responses from the various statutory bodies and consultees. So I don't think you have anything to reproach yourself there. But I must reiterate that point. I think if you decide to step back at this point and have to repeat the Regulation 14, my prediction is we'll be having a meeting similar to this one in 9 months' time, and you really won't have progressed any further at all. Because I will bet a pound to a penny that in that consultation, other things will come forward that, again, have not been considered. And I think Paul Foxley made the point that no plan is perfect. And as a planning professional, it may seem strange for me to say that, but I would strongly agree with that. And I would urge you to move forward now, get policy in place. Alice raised the point, could things be changed later? Yes, they can, because the neighbourhood planning process includes provision to review the plan. You could make the plan the day after the referendum and begin the review the day after that if you so wished. So I would strongly recommend to you, you stick to the timetable in Appendix 3.
Has anyone any questions for Mr. Work? Yes, Jonathan? No?
We've quite a few comments coming through, written questions.
All right. Can we capture those?
I can have a look at them, but it would be for public forum, not this part of the meeting, so I will review them, and if there's anything that needs directly answering, you can do that.
Yeah, and you've got some notes from the people that were spoken to yeah. So you're going to get those out.
They've already been sent out.
They've already been sent out. We've got the minutes from the last lot that came in. Yes,
I ask a question of Michael.
Yes?
If Gleason's were to submit a planning application now, which would be obviously turned down, and then go to appeal, would there be a chance that the plan would reach a stage where that appeal could be turned down? If we go ahead with it now, without delaying it?
The legal position is that the neighbourhood plan, and this comes from a ministerial statement. The neighbourhood plan is given substantial weight once it reaches submission stage, and that's the next stage that we're aiming for. Yeah, so there's the work on the landscape, analysis, the design code, but the plan is in a position, now we have that technical evidence to revise the document and submit. So we could be in a position to submit that document August, September, if not before. And at that stage, the plan gathers that weight. At the moment, it has, in planning terms, no weight whatsoever.
So in that case, if we delay this plan now to add the benches, might you be in a situation where we're giving Gleason time to get their appeal done before the core plan has that weight that we're talking about?
I'm sorry, I struggle to hear that one.
So if the plan was delayed to add in the extra places such as Langers, would this give Gleason the time, if their planning application went to appeal it before the plan gained that weight?
If I understand that correctly, are you saying that if we delayed, would that give time for the plan to gather weight before Gleeson made, we assume any planning application is turned down, to make an appeal and have that appeal determined?
Yeah.
Yeah. I think there's a whole host of things in there. One, how close are Gleeson to a planning application? I think at the minute that's all supposition. It would be a major application. The council would have, what, 13 weeks to determine it. Whether that happens or not, difficult to say. Maybe various technical evidence needs to be collected, revised. My view on that one is, with all those sort of imponderables, you run two risks. One, it doesn't go to appeal because it's approved by Pendle Borough, because the advice they may get from their officers is the Colne neighbourhood plans had to go back out for consultation. It's not going to have the weight of being submitted. We can't defend it because we haven't got a 5-year supply. Given that position, we recommend you approve this. Now, that may or may not happen, I don't know. That's one risk you run. The second risk you run, of course, is it does go to appeal, and even if we repeat the Regulation 14, I cannot guarantee to you that we would submit that document before that appeal is held and that decision is issued. You run a risk. It's difficult to quantify what the risk is on the second one.
Which anyone can work out before you get to the end of it. Sorry, go on.
Anybody else? I've got any questions for Michael? Anybody? No? You've got item 5, you've got the appendix from Kirkland, and you've got the report from Gina, which goes into great detail. So I urge everybody to read it thoroughly for next Tuesday and to think about what's been said at this meeting, both from the residents and from all of us at this meeting. We're all town councillors, and it's our responsibility, so we need to take this responsibility seriously. Okay. So we've got time and date of the next regular meeting. Oh, sorry. Yes.
26, the neighbourhood plan. I'm guessing that's me.
Well, I thought you were doing them both together.
Oh, well, I didn't.
No,
I didn't. I'll be really speedy. I would like to give Gina an A-star for her excellent paper that I think is understandable by everybody. It's very, very clear. So where are we up to with the neighbourhood plan so far? We've got long-range use analysis, been submitted, and it is excellent. It is excellent. We're so pleased with it, aren't we, Gina? All the main views of Colne are classified, discussed, including from the lenses, and really from the rock to the lenses, and the importance of that view. So that will be a really key document that will really boost our evidence base. The documents about marketing sustainably living in Colne, come to Colne, part of that. That is very nearly ready. We're just waiting for one new picture of some lovely terrace house streets, because at the moment it's out of clear the sort of property that we're showing in that brochure. It looks beautiful, doesn't it, Gina? It's a very, very beautiful document, and it will be on our website as an interactive website as well. So that's another thing of the evidence space that we were adding to. I'm afraid I'm chasing the design code people. They're not really coming back to me. Things are moving on with the viabilities analysis, and that is linking into the levelling up funds, among other things, and having conversations with that chap at the counties. So there are two more very important planks of our evidence base when we went out at Regulation 14 they were found to be weaknesses within our plan. So we are getting professional help to boost those. And as we get closer to getting the design code and the viability complete, but not finished, I will then apply for further tranche of work, which is like the MOT certificate plan, checking that all the basic conditions have been made, so that when we go to regulation 15, we can supply, not saying we mark our own homework, someone else does, but it comes with that certification that the policies are sound and well drawn up. So yeah, a lot of progress has been made.
Well, we are going to, it's not in the working group, it's going to be an advisory group. And I think it's key that all the councils, not just the people on the neighbourhood plan, because this is such an important issue for Cobham that we all get just different kinds of written notes from the meetings that we have. But I think we can come to those meetings now.
Yeah, I would like everybody to come, and actually I generally thought that members of the public could come, and that technicality, we heard Richard Cawley speaking, was pointed out. It was not known to me. I thought that we could invite him at the very next meeting, and we couldn't. So it's great that we'll be able to consider his evidence base for sports. I hear that sports field was cut for sports today. So, that would go with the sports section of the plan, and they can come with that supporting evidence that we were lacking, weren't we? We tried to find that evidence, and it was not there. So, yeah, it's great that it's open to all people, but it should be open to all members as well.
And it's incumbent that councillors get to know about this plan and be able to talk about it to people that are concerned. Yes, Alice.
I just wanted to know, when do you envisage going to regulation?
Yeah, this is difficult, Alice, because it's not down to me. So it is down to when the design code is finished. So that's locality. We've won that work package. It is free to this council, and also when the viability analysis is complete. Again, two external, well, the same body, but different people within those bodies. So I'm facing this, all I can say.
Okay, are we happy with this now? We'll close the meeting, and the next meeting is next Tuesday at 7 p.m. Okay, well, thank you for attending.